Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show.
Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. We are here, Men Talking Mindfulness. Jon McCaskill from Ruston, Louisiana this time, not from Colorado Springs, my hometown of Ruston, Louisiana, where I grew up. And I'm here with my brother from another mother, Will Schneider, there in New York City. Today, we're going to be talking about equanimity. And I know that's a word that a lot of us don't hear very often, but we're going to be talking about equanimity, what equanimity is, what it isn't, how to develop it, and why it's important. Similar to what we talked about last week with, what was our topic last week? Will,
so now thanks, John.
Put you on the spot, but basically, hey, we're opening up and unpacking parts of mindfulness and meditation and how the beginner's mindset, that's what it was last week.
There you
beginner's
go.
mindset, what it is, what it was important and how to develop it. So today and this week, we're talking about equanimity, why it's important, how to develop it, and what it is. Before we get into the show, we do have our sponsor, Naked Warrior Supplements, Naked Warrior Recovery Supplements. Naked Warrior Recovery is a service-disabled, veteran-owned and operated supplement company owned by a fellow Navy SEAL. They offer a range of supplements from super greens for energy and recovery to broad spectrum CBD products to immune defense. And we'll be dropping the website in the link here shortly or in the comments. Check out that website and then use the code MTM2021. So MTM2021, and you can get 20% off there. Check that out. That all said, Will, brother, great to have you here. Great to see you. How you doing, man?
Yeah, it's good to be back, John. Love the show. It just fills me. All week I'm looking forward to this, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait. And I feel great, John. Again, spring is happening here in New York. I saw some blossoming of some trees and stuff, and it's just kind of exciting. Like, as we kind of thaw out and really tap into spring. It wasn't that cold recently, but it's just nice to have longer days. But I'm feeling great. I'm super stoked for this topic because it's just really, we'll dive into it when we get to it. But thanks you for being here, John. Thank you for always creating such a wonderful space that we get to come together and have some fun and share ideas with ourselves and other people. So thanks. It's good to be here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Always a pleasure. And for those who are watching live, thanks for being with us today. And please share the show with your friends, family, whoever needs to listen, and share the show with the audio podcast when we release the podcast later. Share that with your friends, family. We're really enjoying the effect that the show is having on people. We're really enjoying seeing that what it is we're doing is helping. So please spread the word. And also, if you have any people that may be potential guests for the show, please let us know, because we'd love to bring them on and share their message. So that's where we're going from here. Let's go into our grounding practice, Will, brother. I'd love you to kick it off and ground myself, because I'm excited again to be home here in my hometown, actually in my parents' home. I'm actually looking at some old trophies that I have from my high school days. Those trophies are like 25 years old.
There's a lot of them. How many are there, John, over there? That's really cool.
Yeah, that's just a little handful, man. So what is that?
seven
of them.
Running, huh?
That's back when I was a stud. Funny enough, I'll tell you the story of why I'm here in my mindful moment here in a second after our grounding practice. But yeah, man, super excited to be here in my hometown. So hopefully the sound is coming in and the visual is coming through okay.
Oh yeah, you're sounding good, John. The jackhammer's already started. Let me close my windows before I got, hey, it's a spontaneous show, John.
That's right.
That's a little better.
Live, uncut, unapologetic, right?
Exactly. All right, everybody, let's go and let's ground. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, even if you're driving or walking or on the street somewhere, if you're sitting at your desk, take a moment. We're just going to take a simple pause. If you're driving, obviously be responsible. Say you're walking, you're in a grocery store, maybe just stand for a moment and just do nothing. I like to make some contact, feet on the floor. I like to also interlace my fingers sometimes just to feel that contact and the sensation of the body, or ground your palms on your thighs, or lift the palms up, which is more of a receptive energy in nature that comes into the body. So eyes are closed or open, depending on however comfortable you are or feel. Let's just take a few breaths to begin. So let's start with an exhale. See if you can hit the bottom of the exhale. So breathe all the way out your air. Empty, 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 just to get to that place where it's almost a little scary. And then take a big inhale. And exhale, bottom out again. Empty out. You can pull the navel in to extinguish the rest of that exhale out. And then take another big breath in. And exhale out. Good. Let's just actually work by taking like a 4 or 5 second inhale, and let's take a longer, exaggerated, intentional exhale all the way out, just to calm ourselves down even more. So we're exhale out again. We'll just do 3 rounds of breath like this. So let's inhale for a big breath for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then exhaling really slow for 8, 7, 6. Keep going slowly through the nose. 2, 1. Inhale again. 5, 4. Pause. Exhaling intentionally for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Last one. Inhale. 5. Exhaling slowly. 8, 7, 6. Just take a moment and check in with yourself emotionally. Without judgment, just notice how you are feeling right now. Use your breath to stay connected. And then just to finish, take a little thank you to yourself for making this time today to join the show or listen to the show. And one breath together to finish this off. Take a giant breath in. And exhale through the mouth and through the nose. Whatever you do, make it feel good. And then open those eyes when you're ready. And here we are. How you feeling now, John? After, just like what,
much
2
better.
minutes?
Yeah,
right?
man.
I'm closing my windows.
Yeah. Keep closing those windows, man. Do whatever you got to do. But
There
no,
you go.
I'm feeling great. Thank you for that grounding practice. Again, I was jazzed up being that I'm here in my hometown. I'm broadcasting
Yeah.
from my parents' house, and I'm super excited to be here. And then this afternoon, actually going and attending a track meet where my old high school cross country coach is having the track or the field house dedicated to him. So I'm super excited about today. I'm super excited to see teammates that I haven't seen in like decades. So your practice helped to ground me for the show, because I don't want to come into a Men Talking Mindfulness show and be super jazzed up or anxious or excited through the entire show. I want to show equanimity. I want to show and practice equanimity as we talk about it. And I love seeing the comments already. And as a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and jump into my mindful moment if you don't mind, man.
Oh my God, go for it, Sean. Jump in.
So my mindful moment actually had to do with my brother-in-law, who is here with us today watching. He's actually one of the first people to comment, because when we lost track of what it is we were here to talk about, or rather what we talked about last week, the beginner's mindset, he jumped into the comments and he's like, beginner's mindset. So thanks, Ryan, for keeping me on track. And my mindful moment actually has to do with you, brother, with you, Ryan. And I won't share too much, but I did get an opportunity to surprise Ryan and surprise my whole family as I kind of snuck into my hometown, flew into Dallas, drove a couple hours into my hometown, and just walked into my house like I owned it, my parents' house like I owned it, and was like, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" And my dad and mom were super excited. But then I went and saw Ryan as well and surprised him, and we got to take a picture together and talk for a while. And if you don't know why that's so important to me, one, he's my brother-in-law, so that's important. Obviously, I love my brother-in-law Ryan, but Ryan battled with COVID and was really down low. And Ryan, I hope you don't mind my sharing this. I won't share too much, but there was a lot of people, prayer, support that came in to bolster you and our family up through that. And a lot of people here on the LinkedIn network had to do with that. But then also, literally, we had people flying machines across the country on the same day to help with Ryan. We had people flying plasma across the country to help Ryan. And we had, again, thousands of people praying and supporting. And that moment, I haven't seen Ryan since that. And Ryan, you look fantastic, brother. So good to see you. So excited to see you looking good, feeling good. And for the network that's watching or listening later, thank you for the support. But just being there in the moment with Ryan yesterday, sitting in his backyard, listening to the birds chirping, playing with his dogs, that was my mindful moment for the week. And Ryan, I have you to thank for that. So that's my mindful moment for the week. Over to you,
Wow.
Will. How was yours, man?
Well, that's beautiful, Jon. And thanks for sharing that. And thank you, Ryan, for being here with us and promoting the show and still being on this planet. So that's wow. What a almost like a hero's journey in some ways, right? To get out of that.
Indeed.
Uh,
Indeed.
my mindfulness moment, Jon, has to do with plants. I was really amazed. Like I have this. It's my sound like whatever. If you're a botanist out there, I can use your help on this one. So no, really. Like I have a friend who loves his plants. You guys have maybe heard of the money tree, like that interesting like root system. They usually put them in threes and they like grow up, and they have these beautiful leaves. I actually have one in my place. So my buddy had one in a pot in the middle, and it was a pretty large pot, by a diameter of maybe like 12 inches, and put it right essentially in the middle of the pot. It was growing and doing fine. And then he put, and this is a pretty big one. I'd say it's probably like at that time was maybe, 3 or 4 feet big or something like that. He ended up putting another small money tree in the same pot, like a smaller one. I'm talking like maybe, 9 inches or something like that. And in the same pot, he just like let them be there. And over the last year that these plants have been cohabitating this pot, the bigger plant literally moved its root system to the side of the pot and out of the way of the little plant so it can make way for the sun. I was
wow.
Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I went over the other day. I'm like, look at this tree. I mean, the whole root system like changed its pattern. And I was looking at it a little further yesterday because over there helping him do something. And I was like, oh my God, like I see what this plant did. It literally moved its like large frame. It was like, 5 or 6 times the size of the other one, of the smaller one. It moved itself out of the way to coexist and to be, with this other plant and help it to thrive and grow. And it also makes me think it's like, how can we coexist with each other, in some ways? And how is like either more amazing part is how are these plants communicating with one another, which is so bizarre. But I really enjoyed seeing that and like seeing the beauty of harmony, I guess you can say, and coexistence, and how there's abundance everywhere. You don't have to steal everybody's sunlight. You can make a little room and get them out of the shade. So I thought that was very inspiring for me yesterday.
I love that. That's amazing, man. And it's actually going to tie into one of our shows coming up here with Scott Tucker with the mindful awareness of abundance versus scarcity. That's fantastic to see that in action with a tree or with a plant. And if you've ever read Michael Pollan, I think you've read this. I think we've actually discussed it. Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. It
Yes.
talks about how plants actually can communicate with one another, and it's pretty
Right.
wild to see that. And man, maybe you can take a picture of that and post it in the comments later today. I'd love to see that, man.
I'll do that. I don't know. Yeah, I'll ask my buddy to do it, but that was cool. And everyone's
Yeah,
like, "Hey, I love that, Will. Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate that." And they are
right
amazing.
on,
And we have
right
someone
on.
phoning in from Guam, by the way.
That's
They're
awesome.
checking in from Guam.
That's
That's really
awesome.
great.
And
Um,
I see Ryan commented as well, so he doesn't mind sharing his story. So Ryan is here
yeah,
listening live. Right on, brother.
yeah,
So equanimity, we're going to get into equanimity and what it is, and how to develop it. So uh, that's a big word, right? Equanimity.
yeah.
I used it this morning on a podcast that I was on, and the guy was like, "Hey, you can't use words that are more than 3 syllables." Equanimity. So that's, I don't know, 5 syllables. But
Should I
hey,
jump
man,
in and
yeah,
define it?
please,
I
man,
love going
let's do it.
basic, right? Get our
Let's do it.
baseline.
Yeah.
I'm going to give us 2 baselines here, John, of equanimity, right? Defined, in the dictionary is mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations. Once again, mental calmness, composure. I love that word, composure, John, and
Hmm.
evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations. Going a little deeper into Wikipedia, I'll give you actually the Latin root words of this is equanimitas, which is having an even mind, and the other part is aqueous, which means even of mind and soul. And they go a little bit deeper into the definition, and it said equanimity is a state of psychological stability and composure, which is undisturbed by experience or exposure to emotional pain or other phenomenon that may cause others to lose the balance of their mind.
Mm.
So that's what we're going to talk about today and dive into today. What does that bring up for you, John?
Yeah, well, it brings up, I mean, even just this morning, sitting here, like I mentioned, in my mindful moment, being here in my parents' house, being here in my hometown. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of
Yeah.
excitement, but there's also, in a way, a little bit of sadness. Like, okay, I left this town, I
Mm,
don't know, 20 something years ago, 24 years ago, and a lot has happened since then, both in the town, in the country, in the world, but then also in my own personal life.
mhm.
And we talk about looking back at at our lives, and how sometimes looking back can cause almost like a feeling of shame, a feeling of guilt, or a feeling of depression. And I look back at, these trophies in the background. I'm like, I used to be a superstar runner, and now here I am. And not that I'm not enjoying where I am in my life, but there's always a little bit, hey, looking back. So it's almost that impulsive emotion to
Mm,
look back on it and say, you know what, I wish I could be back there. But then when I start practicing the equanimity, I am present in the here and now, and I am thankful for what I have in the here and now, and I'm not having that impulsive emotion to look back, even though I feel like I'm traveling in time, coming back to my hometown,
yeah.
and I'm going to be meeting with my teammates later today. There's that. Luckily, I have the ability to be present in the here and now, and enjoy the here and now without that impulsive looking back. That's a piece of it. And I know we're also going to get into impulsivity and equanimity on the battlefield, but that's what it brings up right off the bat. The first thought that jumps into my mind is being here in this time warp of mine, and how to
Yeah.
practice being present in the here and now, even though it feels like I'm in a time machine.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing,
What,
John.
what about you, man?
Um, equanimity brings me right back into my Vipassana meditation.
Mm,
I actually did an episode. We did an episode. It was a solo, but the only solo episode we had, John, in season 1, where I talked about Vipassana. So I think it's like probably episode, 10 or 12. I can't remember. I was trying to look which one exactly it is, but Vipassana is a meditation technique that it was the same technique that the Buddha, the Buddha that kind of made the Buddhist practice famous. It's the meditation technique that he developed in order to bring forth his enlightenment. And the practice is like, it's actually a 10-day practice. So, and you actually 10-day retreat. So you go away for 10 days, no talking at all, no communication with the outside world, no communication with anybody else in there, not even like holding doors or saying what's up or making a smile or even eye contact, like no communication. And then you're meditating for 10 hours a day and 1 hour each meditation. So it's really an intense practice. From like, we get up at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, we start meditating by 5, and we're, lights out like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and you just repeat, the next thing, the same thing the next day. But they talk a lot about equanimity because they're trying to get into that space of stillness. Was a big part of it. By the 4th day of the practice, you're asked to sit with strong determination and be still for an entire hour. So it really got me deep into my mind and deep into my impulsivities, deep into my cravings, and the sensations on my body were like going crazy. And just not to react, John, is so incredibly powerful. Or just even to know that I don't need to react is incredibly powerful. And then it's a constant practice of not reacting and not being impulsive or compulsive. So I bring, and the teacher of Vipassana is S.N. Goenka, and he just an incredible teacher, and he does all the teachings across the world. He's actually no longer with us. He passed away in, I think, 1997, and they just do the same teachings to keep the teachings and the practice consistent. And we listen to recordings, and I was in a room with like 75 men, 75 women. They took care of all of our needs. It was all volunteer or donation based. So that was really awesome to make it very accessible to everybody. But that's what comes back to me is like a really understanding, not like from an academic and terminology dictionary kind of way, but really experiencing equanimity within the practice, and then continually trying every day by meditating to continually access and be with, maybe another word instead of equanimity, John, is composure, maintaining my composure and not reactive. So that's what comes up for me with this. And I like the distinction we're making, John, about that, impulsivity or that compulsion, right? Which is like, that's, I like, reacting is acting without thinking. Right. Where we're trying to get into that place of calm, cool, connected self, and then responding to the world around us. And that can mean not doing anything at all. So that's still an action. So
and you talk about the Vipassana meditation, and in my mind, I'm obviously imagining 150 people sitting and doing this meditation retreat in the Vipassana practice, and then just kind of break it down to the single individual practicing. And then imagining myself being that single individual. I know I'm closing my eyes as I'm trying to visualize, as though the audience listening may be able to see this. But anyway,
I can see you, John.
Just sitting, sometimes can physically get uncomfortable, right? And you may have that impulse to shift to get more comfortable, but you may also have the mental impulse to shift your mindset, to shift to something else, and coming back to the here and now, the present moment, and just being quiet and not like clearing your mind. Because I'll get that a lot. People think that meditation is supposed to clear your mind. It's not supposed to clear it. It's just supposed to calm it, supposed to settle it, get you more focused. But you may bounce off and then start thinking about something else because of an impulse, maybe an emotion bubbled up, and that emotion gave you an impulse. Well, in practicing the equanimity, you can bring that impulse back under control and bring it back into the practice of that Vipassana meditation. And that can ultimately set you up for living with more equanimity in your life. As you've practiced and you've brought these impulses under control, now you're walking around in your everyday life, somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're not going to have that impulse to flip them the bird or, chase them down and try to run them down. I mean, because what's that going to do? So it's pretty powerful to have this in your life. and it's a great way to build it is through meditation and through practicing mindfulness.
Right.
And there may be people who are saying, well, how is this different from being stoic or stoicism? And I think there's a lot of overlap between practicing equanimity and being a practitioner of stoicism in some aspects. So, if you don't like that term, equanimity, maybe look up stoicism and see how that's similar, and maybe that's how you can start living. But yeah, impulsivity, or compulsion, that's the exact opposite. And that's what we want to get away from, whether you call it stoicism or whether you call it equanimity. We want to get away from the compulsion and the impulsive side of things, the reactive side, rather than the responding side of our minds and our emotions. So I think that's important. Go ahead.
No, I think we're keep saying practice, and meditation. A lot of people are intimidated by it. Fine, okay, maybe you'll get there someday. I hope you do, because it's really very valuable. But how about just being uncomfortable, John? Getting out of your comfort zone. That's part of stoicism. Is the practice of stoicism is like get uncomfortable, like get out of your comfort zone and then see what you're made of. That's why I love doing cold showers and cold plunges. Like, because it's like you can't hide it. You can't. I mean, your entire body is immersed in cold, and you can't hide it. And it brings up every single feeling, emotionally, mentally, physically, and you have to deal with it. And you have to go right in. You have to literally. I mean, just imagine establishing equanimity in like a 45-degree ice bath.
Yeah,
it's not easy. I mean, it's like training with the SEALs. It's like, holy cow! It's like, what do I do? And it's like, and that's part of the training. It's like, I really feel like if you want to be an awesome and resilient and somebody that lives with equanimity and stoicism and that sense of resilience, is you have to get out and do stuff that deliberately makes you uncomfortable. Like you did that this deliberate discomfort challenge.
Right.
And how much resilience did that? Jason Van Camp, is that Van Camp?
Jason Van Camp, Mission 60. Yeah. Sure enough.
A little plug for him, for sure. Because
stuff,
he's creating awesome individuals because of the exercises that they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that challenge is having a profound effect on some folks, man. Like, and the challenge itself, and then the tribe that surrounds it. But I won't go too far down that road. It's a phenomenal challenge. If you're interested, look up Mission 60, and you can find out more about that challenge. But I do want to touch on the deliberate discomfort, right? The cold water. We're actually bringing Errol Dobler on as a guest in about a month, or actually I think the beginning of May, we're bringing him on. And Errol is a former SEAL and then an FBI agent, and now he's a practitioner of the Wim Hof breathing. And he's written a book that I just finished reading. And it's a really interesting book. I've never seen something done like this, but and I'm going to forget the name of it, but it's like the art and discipline of leadership at home and with your family, or something to that effect. But if you just look up Errol Dobler, but it specifically ties in leadership with cold weather, cold water immersion. And it's really fascinating. And it ties directly into this equanimity and arousal control, if you will. It talks about when you go and stand outside of a cold shower or outside of an ice bath, the emotions that you experience just prior to doing that. You're like, okay, I have fear. I don't want to do this. I hate ice baths. There's a whole lot of negative emotions that kind of surround you. And then not only do you have those emotions, but then you have emotions about your emotions. So you start thinking, you're like, oh man, I have this fear. I have this doubt about what's about to happen. And then you start thinking, oh, I'm weak. I'm a wuss. And you start kind of beating yourself up. And then you actually finally take the plunge into that ice bath or into that freezing cold shower. And then you're like, oh, this hurts. This sucks. And then you start having emotions about those emotions. So I guess another way of looking at equanimity, and I'll make sure I tag Errol on this because it's really interesting. But another way of looking at equanimity is not only controlling your emotions, those base emotions, but then also taking a step back and looking at your emotions about your emotions, what you feel about what you feel, and not judging yourself, not beating yourself up,
Wow. Yeah.
and not really driving yourself down that negative track, that negative self-talk that causes
Mhm.
that guilt and shame that we all quite often deal with. And so it's really interesting that you brought up the ice baths, because I literally just read that book this week. So
Yeah.
check it out, and I'll put the book in the comments. Or actually, I see Lindsay and I see Zach Keller. Actually, Zach Keller
Yeah, I know. You guys
commented.
are great today. Thank you for all
Zach
your
is
help.
yeah,
Yeah,
Zach
sorry.
is from Mission 60, and he did that
Oh,
challenge as
sweet.
well.
Great.
So man, we've got the whole crew chiming in.
I
It's
know
awesome.
everyone's really
It's
helping today.
awesome.
Thank you, everybody out
Yeah,
there, for helping us.
yeah,
Uh, what, like John, we keep talking about, this composure aspect. Like, let's, we have a question here. I love to ask you. It's like, how, I mean, you're SEAL trainer. I mean, not trainer, but SEAL commander, like in combat. I mean, God, like how on the battlefield? I mean, this, I guess, I mean, on literally the battlefield, and this can, I guess, extend to the battlefield of life sometimes, right? Like how when you're in Afghanistan, that picture you talked about earlier behind you is
yeah,
like,
yeah.
is a mission that was very intense. It's like, how, what is the training involved, or how, well, even not even the training, yes, but in battle, like how are you able to be, with the world seemingly just crumbling around you, able to stay on point, stay on mission, and take care of your brothers?
Yeah, well, I'll be completely vulnerable here and tell you that up front, my first few SEAL missions where I was leading those missions, I was not the picture of calm, cool, and collected.
Mm, mm,
I was quite honestly, I was scared, and not just scared of the enemy, but scared of what my men would think about me as a
wow.
leader, and think about the calls that I made on the battlefield. There was a lot of angst about that.
Mm,
I wish that I had the tools of mindfulness and meditation earlier on in my career, so that I could have been. I feel I could have been a better leader on the battlefield. I did end up finding the tools of mindfulness and meditation later in my career, and I feel that I was a better leader then, and I feel that I'm better equipped to be a better leader now, and I probably would be a better operator on the battlefield now.
mm,
That said, I think as some of it, as far as preparing special operators for the battlefield specifically, we do go through a lot of training. We develop a lot of muscle memory, and we
mm,
do also go through that deliberate discomfort.
mm.
We all go through, whether it's SEALs, whether it's Special Forces, whether it's Marine Raiders, Air Force PJs, whatever the case may be, going through some type of selection course where you are put through the ringer, where you're put into situations where you are intentionally suffering. And that is, the meaning of life, or that life is suffering, right? That I think helps to develop that um calm, cool, and collected state. Sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably would have been worse if they had just taken me straight from, boot camp, said, "Hey, you're going to be a leader. Go out on the battlefield."
Yeah.
I would have been worse, having not have gone through the crucible of basic underwater demolition, SEAL training, buds, or if some of my friends hadn't gone through Ranger School or Army SF selection, they they would not have been as good. But I still think we could all have been better if we had had the practices of mindfulness and meditation in our lives, and developed that equanimity on purpose, so that we wouldn't react as often, and more often would have responded and been more rational. Don't get me wrong, I still think we're fairly damn good at what we do.
Yeah.
But I think we could all be better if we intentionally work towards that equanimity.
Yeah. And it's like, and as I hear you talking about your training, and I love that, people are saying it's like, be comfortable with the uncomfortable, but that's all through experience. Like,
Hmm.
you continually, I'm sure, after mission, like first mission, second mission, that you were able to, because you had the experience, because you were living in that environment, function that environment, and you able to just, that experience is so important for this. I think that's like one of the key ingredients of equanimity is practice, experience. I would think like reflecting on it, right? Understanding breath, right? Really, I mean, how important is like to really, that's what calms us down. That's why, we worked on that little, I like to think of it as like a triage breath, like taking that big inhale for 5, but really taking a very deliberate, extensive exhale all the way out, which, we always talk about how the breath affects our nervous system and our mind and our emotions and how it deliberately slows everything down. So I feel
Right.
like this equanimity is always a work in progress. We can always be, in that more calm, cool, and connected state of being, which serves us and everyone else around us when we do that, because we're not only leading ourselves in those moments, John, but we're also leading everybody else. Even if we're not in a leading position, if you're in a group of 10 people and 9 people are freaking out, and there's one person that's still and calm, right? I think you'd be
Hmm.
amazed that all those 9 people would slowly, I think, vibrate to that calm state of being
Oh
in
yeah.
some,
Yeah.
and that's just which is crazy to think about, but it's like, I love that we've used this analogy many times, that tuning fork. It's like, what are
Yeah.
you vibrating at? How are you
Right.
vibrating? And I think we have a natural state because of how we're neurologically designed to have a calm state of being, because
Right.
that's when we really begin to tap into all of this biological brilliance that is just waiting to be unleashed and waiting to be in the world, because it makes us thrive as human beings.
Yeah.
So
I like the fact that you brought up, the fact that one person and how they are being can
mm,
really resonate and that tuning fork and
yeah,
change how everybody else is feeling. And I'll give you an
right.
example. I wasn't on the battlefield for this, but it is a battlefield example. I was overseas in Iraq, 2007. I think it was 2007, um, and I was on the radio back at headquarters listening to an operation happening. And one of the leaders, and I'll mention him by name because I have tremendous respect for him, fellow SEAL Coleman Ruiz,
Mm,
or Ruiz. He's he's leading this operation, and we end up losing a guy. He ends up getting killed on the battlefield. And Coleman is also a big practitioner of meditation and mindfulness. And um, he gets on the radio, and when we have an enemy killed in action, we have an enemy KIA, EKIA.
mm,
That's what we say. But if we have a friendly killed in action, we can say eagle down, or friendly killed in action, FKIA. And when Coleman came across the radio, and he comes across the radio, he's like, "Hey, this is," and I forget what Coleman's call sign was, but he comes across, and he says, "Hey, we have one friendly killed in action," and he just said it like deadpan, like no emotion,
mm,
completely calm, cool, and collected. But he needed to be that way. He needed to be
uh,
that way for the men that were on the battlefield physically for him right then, because that one individual was killed. His name, we called him Badger. He was killed, but there were still other men in the fight that needed to be evacuated. We needed to get out of there.
yeah, needed
And not only
leadership,
they
right?
needed
Yeah,
leadership,
yeah.
exactly. And Coleman was the epitome of leadership.
Mm,
And then not only were the men on the battlefield, they needed to see a leader that was in control of his emotions. But we back at headquarters needed to hear a leader who was in control so that we
wow.
could communicate with him about what needed to happen. And we there in the headquarters didn't freak out like, oh my gosh, one of our guys has been killed, because he came across cool, calm, and collected. We were able to be calm, cool, and collected there in the headquarters, and we were
Mm,
able to communicate with him about what
yeah,
needed to happen. Um,
yeah,
and again, uh, Coleman's a practitioner of mindfulness and meditation. I don't know whether he was then, but
yeah,
he was practicing equanimity
yeah,
100%, and
yeah,
it paid off for his men on the battlefield. It paid off for us at headquarters, and it paid off for the communication between us at headquarters and them there on the battlefield. So
wow,
that's a battlefield example, though I wasn't the one on the battlefield.
yeah.
It's the example that pops to mind right off the bat.
Well, tell me if I'm
But
wrong,
it ties in
John.
with the teams
Yeah,
that you were
yeah.
mentioning. How
No,
that
no,
one
no.
individual can affect
Yeah.
the team.
Right. Yeah. Well, tell me if I'm wrong, John. Even in that situation, like, we're in the moment. This is all happening. It's terrible, or it's terrible. And but it's not like we I guess we put that emotional response that wants or reaction that wants to come up aside for a moment. But I would imagine there's still time for that grieving process. There's
Yeah.
still time to be like, "Oh, God, you know what I mean? Like we lost somebody. But in that moment, right, when it's a very, very dynamic and potentially deadly situation, you have to be on point,
Right.
and
Right.
that comes through that training and that practice what's the SEALs, what do they say? It's like you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training,
Right. Yeah.
right?
And then, a lot of the time the opposite is thought. Everybody's like, you're going to rise to the occasion. You don't rise
Mhm.
to the occasion.
Yeah,
Never has
right.
anybody risen to the occasion. They fall back to the
Mm.
level of their training. So the
Yeah,
more
and
you
if you don't
train,
have any training, like, what are you
exactly,
falling back on,
exactly, right,
right?
right.
Yeah, how
So
about John? I want to. This is something brand new for us. Let's do an exercise right now. Is that
all
cool?
right,
We just do a
yeah,
little
man,
exercise.
let's
So
do it.
straight up. This is Vipassana meditation. All we're gonna do, and I would love everyone to participate, whether you're on the live feed. Thank you for being here. And I want your feedback when we get done. All we're gonna do, and I'm gonna set a timer. We're just gonna take 30 seconds. Get back, assume our meditative state like we did earlier at the beginning of the show. And if you're driving, okay, do what you can, right? If you're walking on the street somewhere, how about you just take a moment right now and just stop everything that you're doing, and we're just gonna do the best we can to remain still, right, perfectly still for just 30 seconds. Okay, so assume your position. I'm gonna use a timer just so we can, you don't think I'm. You're like, is it really 30 seconds? Wait until you see how long 30 seconds is, John. Uh, so, all right. So find your position, get really comfortable. We'll do after our one breath collectively together, then we're going to drop in and do 30 seconds and we'll see how we end up. And then we'll talk about it afterwards. Great. So let's exhale the breath all the way out. Make those last little wiggles if you need to. Take a big, big breath in. And here we go, around the clock, exhale. And just simply sit here. And how about we just listen to sound? Just simply staying still and listening to sound. Boom. All right. Let's check in. How was that, John?
Well, luckily, I'm a practitioner, so it was easier than it would have been 5 or 6 years ago. If you had told me to
Yeah.
sit quietly and do nothing for 30 seconds, I would have been like, "No, dude, I'm a busy guy. I've got things to do. I can't stop for 30 seconds. Not
Right.
only can I not stop physically moving, but I can't stop mentally thinking."
Right.
But just taking that pause there, I could see, and I noticed a few times, hey, my mind is starting to wander off, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I started to beat myself up. I'm like, John, you're a practitioner. This is 30 seconds. Come on, get it under control. And I
Right.
started to beat myself up. So I
Right.
can see where the longer Vipassana meditations, especially for somebody who's never meditated before,
Yeah.
can really be difficult. But it's also great to get those mental and physical impulses under control, and
Yeah.
that's where the equanimity comes in. Yeah,
Right.
how was it for you,
Right. And
man?
that's where it comes from practice. Cindy says here, she goes, that was really tough to do. Now, how to still the mind. And yes, it is mental, but also that stillness is that those physical impulses, that it's almost like that, the mind's way of expressing itself, by like, oh, I'm going to fix my shirt, or I'm going to scratch an itch, or, I'm just going to, make a face or move my jaw or something like that, or smile. Um, um, uh, so like, John, I want to read, just from that experience. A great, great, great master still with us today, Eckhart Tolle. I'm sure you've heard of
Hmm.
Power of
Yeah.
Now, A New Earth, great book. And this is his small book called Stillness Speaks. And which so here's like, this is on page 63, the opening of the chapter of acceptance and surrender, John, chapter number 6. And he says, whenever you're able to have a look inside yourself to see whether you are unconsciously creating conflict between the inner and the outer, between your external circumstances at that moment, where you are, who you are with, or what you are doing, and your thoughts and feelings, can you feel how painful it is to internally stand in opposition to what is? When you recognize this, you also realize that you are now free to give up this futile conflict, this inner state of war. So that's Eckhart Tolle, Stillness Speaks. And what does that bring up for you, John?
The inner state of war, that last little part, is something that I think is important, both on the grand scale of things, like specifically with someone with post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury or something to that effect, that we've got this inner state of war quite often, quite literally. Even sometimes we think back to the battlefield, and I think that practicing equanimity can get us under control, because sometimes there's a feeling of guilt or shame, not only from that traumatic event, but from reliving it. There's like, hey, I shouldn't be reliving that. That's kind of a state of war, even an internal war with yourself. Hey, I shouldn't be having that. And then you beat yourself up for that. The other side of things, and it's come into play just as we were preparing for this show, looked up equanimity again, just to make sure I had the definition right in my mind, and knew exactly what it was we were going to be talking about. But this week, like excuse me, 2 weeks ago, just about, we were snowed in at my house, so I went out and shoveled some snow. And I'm not in the shape that I used to be, and shoveling the snow, I ended up like straining my back, and it's been painful at night specifically, and I haven't been able to sleep well. But in prepping for this show, equanimity, I realized, you know what? Not only am I feeling that physically, but I'm beating myself up at night saying, "Oh, I'm so weak. I should be able to overcome this pain." And then I beat myself up for that, and it's just kind of like this circle. Well, what I did was I did some equanimity meditations, just in my mind, not even a formal meditation, just equanimity thoughts, I guess, was, you know what? This is how it is right now. This is just how it is. Just acceptance, right? Accepting that pain.
Right.
Accepting being with that pain, and not giving into it. And then I was able to go to sleep. And that was that inner war. So I was able to quiet that inner war in my mind, just over a physical pain. And the impulse of mine was, ow, that hurts. Ow, ow, ow. Whereas if I was practicing the equanimity and this is how it is right now, then I was able to get that under control and then fall back asleep, and obviously feel a lot better, because now not only am I not paying as much attention to the pain, but now I'm feeling more rested. So that was the part that jumped out at me when you read that most, was that inner war.
And it's funny, he talks about war in the chapter that's entitled Acceptance and Surrender. So it's not like, we're not like, and that's what I think when I work with my meditation students and yoga and the mindfulness stuff work that I do, I really continually remind my students, it's like, accept, embrace. It's like the more you, and our ego is so incredibly powerful, that thinking mind that never seemed like the inner roommate, as Michael Singer in the Untitled Soul calls it. It's never going to be satisfied. It's incredibly genius in some ways, because it's always just trying to F with you. It's like, what about this? What about that? How about this? How about over here? Remember this? Remember that? It's like, oh my God. And instead of like, go away, like you're an asshole, like stop it. You know what I mean? Like, leave me alone. Like, could you just stop? And this constant inner state, this inner war, what if it's just knowing that it's there, accepting that it's there, and surrendering to really what is. And I like when he says this futile conflict, because you will
Mhm.
never have, I mean, maybe, sadly, I'm going to say this, but that's why I feel, when people do commit suicide, they usually don't shoot themselves in the heart. They shoot themselves in the head, and
Mm.
it's not real morbid. I'm sorry, but it's like, because you just can't shut it off. But it's not about shutting it off. It's about being aware that it's there and not let it mess with you.
Yeah.
Not let it dictate your experience, not let it, get you all angered and fired up and say something to somebody regretfully, and then you're backpedaling from that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, um, yeah, so that's, I'm loving what we're talking about, John. This is a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
I
It
mean, it
really,
definitely,
really,
it hits
yeah,
home, right? It hits it, some
does.
of the, even some of the morbid conversation it's,
Yeah,
it strikes a nerve.
yeah,
And I think hopefully it does strike a nerve with some people, and they can start practicing and get some of the stuff that's in their mind, or even the negative self-talk that they have, where they're beating themselves up for those emotions. So
yeah,
again, those emotions about their emotions, they
yeah.
can start to really get that under control, and hopefully it can help them out. I'd love to go through some of the comments or questions that
Oh
we
yeah,
have
please.
from some
Yeah.
of our live listeners. So um, my scrolling got tied up there. There it is.
Okay.
Got it back. So um, we got one of our listeners, live listeners, says, "How do you address that sadness wistfully within you in that environment? Do
Mm.
you have intentional time for you?" What are your thoughts on that, Will? Again, how do
Uh,
you address that sadness and wistfulness within you, and do you have personal intentional time for you? You
Yeah,
have any
I
thoughts
think
on that?
it's like, what I think I forget who said the comment. I can't see it right. Oh, Shannon. That's why, that's what time is for. I mean, so when I'm in control, John, when I am in, the driver's seat, and I'm trying to, move intentionally through whatever that particular moment is, like, I'm not gonna, we're in a podcast right now. My intention is to listen, right? And to respond, and all the other things we do at the podcast. But like, I will make time, like, if I'm in, something comes up upsetting in a particular circumstance, I'll make time to grieve, or time to talk to somebody, time to, debrief and reevaluate, so I can be more effective later on. Instead of letting, that reaction come through, which
Hmm.
completely destroys the moment, pulls you out of intention, and then it just, then what are you left with?
Right.
Right? I mean, I'm sure I have a friends. One friend in particular is very impulsive. It's always like rah rah rah. It's like over here, over there, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, whoa, it's hard to keep up with them sometimes. I'm just like, it's like, we just like chill for a moment, like, and just relax, and stay on point. We're like packing up your stuff right now. Let's just do that, instead of worried about like stuff that's going to happen 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but how about yourself? Like, I feel like that question might have came
Yeah.
up when we were talking about being on the battlefield,
Right.
and dealing with,
Well,
like, whoa, you know?
yeah. So I'll address sadness in that,
Mhm.
and we've addressed sadness, we've addressed a lot of emotions in some of our past episodes, and
Yeah.
I think again, I want to make sure we're clear here. We're not saying that by practicing equanimity you can't feel these emotions. You
No.
can't feel sadness. You can't feel happiness. You can't be elated, or frustrated. The thing is that you don't cling to those emotions, right? You don't cling to them, and
Mhm.
and I think sadness is often one that we feel the emotion of sadness, and then it compounds on itself, and we feel guilt or shame for having that sadness. And specifically, I won't say specifically as men, but specifically as people who are on the hyper side of masculinity, there's a deep feeling of guilt or shame with feeling sadness.
Right.
The only acceptable emotion, and we've talked about this before, Will, when you're that kind of far on the spectrum of femininity versus masculinity, the only one that's acceptable is anger.
Yeah.
Anger, but
Mhm. Mhm.
sadness, I think you have to be with it, but then don't cling to it. And
Right.
you can be sad and happy at the same time, which sounds crazy, but you can be experiencing something that causes sadness, like let's say a funeral, for example, right? You go to a funeral, You're obviously sad for the loss of your loved one, but that funeral may bring you together with loved ones that you haven't seen for years.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
in that, you can experience happiness at the same time as sadness. So, how do you address sadness and wistfulness in that environment? So, I think you have to be with it, but then don't cling to it. Allow yourself to experience the other
Yeah.
sensations and emotions that come in this thing called life. So that's how
Yeah.
I personally address sadness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see what
And
else.
also letting like sadness, John, like, take your moment for sadness. Like, I talked about my dear aunt that passed away, and that, the
Hmm.
grieving process is real. Sadness is real. And if
Right.
you don't grieve, it is going to mess with you some other time later in
Beats you
life,
up.
probably throughout your life, if you don't let it pass through. Like, I love that idea of emotions. Emotion is energy in motion. If it's not
Mm,
moving through you in some ways, it is moving in you some ways, and it's creating more thought. Feelings connect to thoughts, thoughts connect to feelings, and you're just rolling through and then creating patterns of being and doing and thinking that are not going to bring you into this equanimity and into your, really your brilliant leadership, powerful self.
right.
So
Right.
it's important to grieve. It's absolutely important to grieve and
Yeah.
have those moments of, even frustration, or, it's okay to lash out when, not in a meeting, you're not on a podcast, but, to talk to a friend and be like, yo, oh my God, I'm so angry about that. That's okay. That's what friends are
Right.
for. That's what good
Right.
friends are going to hold that space for you.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And then we got one comment here that I just want to make sure we address, and then we'll get into our closing
Yeah. Yeah.
grounding practice and then wrap it up. So it says important to distinguish femininity and masculinity versus feminine and masculine energy. Absolutely, and fully agree on that. You can be a man and have feminine energy, and you can be a woman and have masculine energy. If you've
Yeah.
listened to some of our shows on toxic masculinity or confined masculinity in the past, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for highlighting that. Important to
Yeah.
distinguish the femininity and masculinity versus feminine and masculine energy. That
Mm.
all said,
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up with a quick
Please, John.
equanimity practice, and then we'll close the show. Thank you so much for watching, listening with us today. We really appreciate it. And if you're going to shut down before the practice, we'd love for you to join us every week here live on LinkedIn or on Facebook Live, or if you can't join us live, join us for the podcast, and share the podcast with anyone and everyone who needs to hear what it is Will and I and our guests are discussing. And please give us a rating, review, any feedback. We would love that feedback too. So I switched up there a little, Will. I said that before the grounding practice because I don't want to lose those who are with us live right now. So that
Awesome.
said, we'll get into the closing practice. Go ahead and get into a comfortable position and just bring your awareness and your attention intentionally to your emotions. What are you feeling right now? Your emotions and your physical sensations. Are you feeling any pain? Let's just do one deep breath, letting your breath out to begin. Then breathe into that emotion and breathe into that physical pain or stress, anxiety. Breathe into that. Hold it and relax, letting that breath go nice and slowly. One more, just focusing on that physical sensation, the pain, or that emotion that you're focusing on. Breathing deep down into your belly and relaxing. And now, again, just hyper focus on either that physical discomfort, physical pain, emotional discomfort, emotional pain. Just say to yourself, ah, this is how it is right now. And again, saying to yourself, ah, this is how it is right now. Don't judge yourself for any of the physical or emotional experiences you're feeling right now. Just be with it, acknowledge it, and then let it go. Be with it, acknowledge it, and then just let it go. And then let's finish with one last deep cleansing breath. Begin by breathing out all your air, bringing your navel to your spine. Deep breath down into your belly, really expanding your belly, into your chest. Hold that. And now let it go nice and slowly. Slow, slow, slow. And when you're ready, go ahead and bring some movement back in your body and open up your eyes. Thanks again, Will, for this space. Thanks for those who tuned in live. Thanks for those who are listening later, either on the video on YouTube or on our podcast. Brother, it's been great. Thank you so much for this space, man.
Yeah, same, John. Thank you. And everyone out there, thank you for listening and reviewing and sharing and being a part of this community. John, always a pleasure, man. Such a beautiful time today with you and everyone else.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And you have a wonderful weekend, brother. And you, for those with us live, have a wonderful weekend. For those who are tuning in later, have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thanks for joining Will and Jon on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.